You wake in the middle of the night, and there it is again, that weight pressing against your chest. Not anxiety exactly, not fear in any conventional sense, but something heavier, something that has no name in the vocabulary of ordinary suffering. You lie there in the darkness, and your mind moves through everything you now understand, everything you have come to see about the world, about people, about the mechanisms of human behavior that everyone else seems content to ignore. And with each thought, the distance between you and the sleeping world grows wider. You used to sleep peacefully. You used to move through your days with a kind of ease that now seems impossible, almost laughable. But something changed. You started seeing, not all at once, but gradually, like dawn breaking over a landscape you thought you knew, revealing its true shape for the first time. And what you saw was not comfortable. What you saw was not the story everyone else seems to believe. You saw the masks people wear, the lies they tell themselves, the elaborate performances they stage to avoid facing what is real. You saw the machinery of social pretense, the unspoken agreements that hold relationships together through shared delusion rather than genuine connection. You saw how much of human interaction is theater, how much is simply people protecting themselves from truth by wrapping themselves in acceptable fictions. And once you saw these things, you could not unsee them. You tried, perhaps, you tried to go back to the comfortable ignorance, to rejoin the dance of pleasant surfaces and reassuring narratives. But truth, once glimpsed, does not allow retreat. It pursues you. It demands recognition. And so you find yourself here, alone with what you know, watching the world move in patterns you can no longer participate in without feeling like you are betraying something essential within yourself. The peace you once had is gone, ripped away by understanding, and the isolation grows deeper with each passing day. Because how do you explain to someone who is still asleep that they are dreaming? How do you share what you see with those who have invested everything in not seeing? You cannot. And so you carry this knowledge alone, this burden that nobody asked you to take up, but which you cannot put down. Let me tell you something that no one else will say to you, something that might be the only true comfort you will find in this darkness. You are not broken. You are not sick. You are not suffering from some defect of character or failure of will. What you are experiencing is not a disease that needs to be cured or a weakness that needs to be overcome. You are living through what Dostoevsky understood to be the inevitable consequence of genuine consciousness, the natural state of a soul that has chosen truth over comfort. In all of his works, in every character he created who possessed real depth of perception, he showed this same pattern. The moment you truly see, the moment you allow yourself to perceive reality without the filters and illusions that society provides, you step outside the circle of collective unconsciousness. And that step, that terrible step toward truth, brings with it a loneliness that nothing in your previous life prepared you for. But here is what matters most. This loneliness is not a sign that you have taken a wrong turn. It is not evidence that you should have remained ignorant, that you should have kept your eyes closed like everyone else. This isolation you feel is the mark of having crossed a threshold that most people never approach. It is the price, yes, but also the proof that you have chosen authenticity over ease, reality over illusion, consciousness over the comfortable sleep of the masses. You are not too sensitive, too cynical, too difficult, or too damaged. You are simply awake in a world that prefers to sleepwalk, and the sleeping cannot understand why you will not lie down beside them and close your eyes again. Dostoevsky understood something about truth that our modern world has forgotten entirely. He understood that truth is not a liberation in the way we imagine it to be. We have been sold a lie about truth, the comforting myth that knowing reality will set you free, that understanding how things really work will bring you peace and empowerment. But Dostoevsky knew better. In Notes from Underground, he created a character, the underground man, who sees through everything and is destroyed by that very sight. This man possesses what Dostoevsky called acute consciousness. He perceives the motivations behind human behavior, the self-deceptions that drive even the noblest actions, the emptiness at the heart of social conventions. And this perception does not liberate him. It imprisons him. It cuts him off from the simple pleasures that sustain normal people. It makes genuine connection nearly impossible because he cannot participate in the shared illusions that make connection possible. What you call the loss of your peace, Dostoevsky would call the burden of consciousness. What you experience as isolation, he would recognize as the inevitable condition of the person who refuses to lie to themselves anymore. The truth has not set you free. It has bound you to a way of seeing that separates you from those who still dwell in comfortable falsehood. And here is the most painful part, the part that keeps you awake at night. No one is coming to save you from this. There is no rescue waiting. The people in your life, even those who claim to love you, cannot reach into this place where you now exist because they cannot see what you see. They look at the same world and perceive something entirely different. They move through their days sustained by beliefs and assumptions that you can no longer hold. And when you try to share what you have come to understand, when you attempt to show them what is real beneath the pleasant surfaces, they do not thank you for the revelation. They pull away, they become uncomfortable, they accuse you of being negative, cynical, difficult, because what you are showing them threatens the entire structure of meaning they have built their lives upon. But let me take you deeper into this, because there are layers to this isolation that most people who experience it never fully understand. Dostoevsky spent his entire literary life exploring these layers, dissecting the psychology of the conscious person with a precision that no one, before or since, has matched. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov discovers that seeing beyond conventional morality, understanding the arbitrary nature of social rules, does not make him superior or powerful. It makes him sick. He commits his crime, believing that consciousness of the truth about morality exempts him from moral law, that awareness itself is a kind of permission to transcend ordinary constraints. But what he discovers is that the awareness brings with it a different kind of prison, one built not from external rules, but from the weight of consciousness itself. You cannot escape from what you know. You cannot unknow what you have understood, and this knowing becomes its own form of punishment, far more severe than any external penalty. The first layer of isolation that truth brings is the simplest to understand, but perhaps the hardest to bear. It is the loneliness of not being able to share your inner world with anyone. You see a conversation happening in front of you, people discussing their plans, their worries, their excitement about some future event, and you hear beneath the words the real dynamics at play, the power struggles masked as cooperation, the fear disguised as confidence, the desperate need for validation hidden behind every opinion offered. You hear all of this with perfect clarity, and you realize that everyone else in the room is deaf to it. They are having one conversation while you are hearing an entirely different one. This creates a strange doubling of reality. You exist simultaneously in two worlds that have almost nothing to do with each other. There is the world that everyone else inhabits, where things mean what they appear to mean, where people are who they claim to be, where social interactions follow predictable and mostly benign patterns. And then there is the world you inhabit, where nothing is quite what it seems, where every interaction contains hidden dimensions of manipulation, self-deception, and unconscious motivation. You cannot leave your world and return to theirs, but you also cannot invite them into yours without destroying the very foundations of their peace. So you learn to live in both worlds at once, speaking the language of the common world while silently observing from your own private reality. This is exhausting in ways that people who have never experienced it cannot imagine. The second layer is even more painful, and this is where Dostoevsky's genius becomes most apparent. It is the discovery that your perception, your ability to see through illusions, does not make you better than other people. In fact, it often makes you worse. The underground man discovers this with devastating clarity. He sees through the simple, decent people around him, recognizes their limitations and hypocrisies and unconscious cruelties, and he feels superior to them because of this perception. But then he realizes something terrible. His superior understanding does not translate into superior action. He is not kinder because he sees more clearly. He is not braver because he understands the nature of fear. He is not more honest because he recognizes everyone else's lies. If anything, his consciousness makes him more paralyzed, more bitter, more capable of subtle cruelties than the simple people he despises. He can see the good in their limitations, the grace in their ignorance, the genuine connection they achieve precisely because they do not overthink everything the way he does. And this realization that consciousness does not equal virtue, that awareness does not make you a better person, is almost unbearable. You have paid the price of peace. You have accepted the burden of isolation. And for what? Not to become enlightened or superior or free, simply to be alone with a clearer view of human nature, including your own flawed nature. This is the second isolation, not just being separate from others, but being separated from any sense of moral superiority that might justify that separation. You're not a prophet among fools. You are simply someone who cannot stop seeing, and that seeing has brought you no special wisdom or goodness, only a particular kind of suffering. The third layer Dostoevsky explored is perhaps the most complex. It is the isolation that comes from recognizing that the truth you see is itself incomplete, that consciousness itself might be another form of illusion, just a different illusion than the one everyone else is living in. In The Brothers Karamazov, Ivan Karamazov represents the person who has thought everything through to its logical conclusion. He has examined morality, faith, suffering, meaning, and found them all wanting. He has constructed a perfect logical case against the universe, against God, against the idea that life has any redemptive meaning. And his arguments are brilliant. They are airtight. No one in the novel can refute him intellectually. But then Dostoevsky shows us what happens to a person who lives entirely in that consciousness, who makes logic and clarity and refusal of illusion their guiding principles. Ivan goes mad, not because his logic is wrong, but because logic alone cannot sustain a human life. Pure consciousness, consciousness that recognizes no limits and no mystery beyond itself, consciousness that insists on perfect clarity about everything, becomes a kind of hell. Ivan's isolation is not just from other people, but from life itself, from the possibility of faith or hope or love that cannot be explained or justified in rational terms. He is trapped in his own brilliant mind, unable to escape the conclusions it has drawn, unable to find any way back to the simpler, less conscious way of being that might actually allow him to live. You may recognize yourself in Ivan. You may have discovered that your consciousness, your ability to see through everything, has left you stranded in a place where nothing feels real anymore, where even your own emotions seem like performances, where you have analyzed yourself so thoroughly that you have lost contact with the spontaneous, unreflective self that actually feels things and wants things and can act without endless second guessing. This is the third isolation, the most profound one. Being isolated not just from other people, but from your own capacity for simple, direct experience. And here is where Dostoevsky's insight becomes almost unbearable in its honesty. He recognized that there is no easy resolution to this condition. The underground man does not find peace. Raskolnikov finds something, perhaps, through suffering and confession. But he does not return to innocence. Ivan does not recover his faith through logic. Dostoevsky was too honest to offer false comfort, too penetrating in his understanding of consciousness to pretend that awareness could be easily integrated or overcome. But what he did offer, what runs through all of his work like a quiet underground river, is the recognition that this suffering has meaning, not meaning in the sense of being useful or redemptive or leading to some greater happiness, but meaning in the sense of being real. The isolation of consciousness is real suffering, authentic suffering, the suffering of someone who has refused to hide from truth. And there is a strange dignity in that, a kind of terrible nobility. You are not suffering because you are weak or because you have made wrong choices. You are suffering because you have made the hardest choice possible, the choice to see. In a world built on shared blindness, you have opened your eyes. In a society sustained by comfortable lies, you have insisted on truth, and the price of that insistence is everything you are now experiencing. The peace is gone because you can no longer pretend. The connection is gone because you can no longer perform the rituals of unconscious solidarity. The ease is gone because you can no longer act without seeing all the implications of your actions. This is not a disease. This is the condition of consciousness itself when it is genuinely awake. Dostoevsky offered no techniques for managing this state, no steps to follow, no practices that would make it easier. He did not believe in making it easier because he did not believe it should be easy. What he offered instead was permission to feel the full weight of what you are experiencing, to acknowledge that yes, this is as difficult as it feels. That no, there is no simple solution. That yes, you are truly alone in ways that other people cannot comprehend. But he also offered something else, something harder to name, but perhaps more valuable than any technique or solution. He offered the recognition that there are others who have walked this path before you, others who have known this particular quality of isolation, who have felt the burden of consciousness and survived it not by overcoming it, but by integrating it into their understanding of what it means to be human. When you read Dostoevsky, you are not reading self help. You are encountering a mirror. You are meeting someone who saw what you see, who felt what you feel, who understood that consciousness is both gift and curse, and who refused to lie about either aspect. The underground man is not a character meant to inspire you. He is a character meant to make you feel less alone in your own underground. Raskolnikov is not a hero whose journey you should emulate. He is a documentation of what happens to a person who tries to live beyond good and evil while still possessing a conscience. Ivan is not a thinker whose conclusions you should adopt. He is a warning about where pure rationality leads when divorced from everything else that makes us human. And yet, in all these characters, in all their suffering and isolation and inability to find peace, there is something else. There is the recognition that they are more alive, more authentically human than the comfortable people who surround them. They suffer more because they are conscious of more. They are isolated because they have refused to participate in the collective delusion. And while this does not make their suffering noble or beautiful or redemptive in any conventional sense, it does make it real. So what do you do with this understanding? How do you live with the truth that has stolen your peace and left you isolated? Dostoevsky would not tell you to find balance or practice self-care or learn to set boundaries. Those answers belong to a world that believes consciousness can be managed, that awareness can be integrated into a happy life with the right techniques. But Dostoevsky lived in a different world, a world that recognized that some truths are unintegrable, that some burdens cannot be made lighter, that some isolations cannot be overcome. What he would tell you, what he demonstrated through his own life and work, is that you carry it. You carry the weight of what you see. You carry the isolation of consciousness. You carry the loss of peace that truth demands, not because carrying it will lead somewhere, not because it will make you better or stronger or more enlightened, but simply because this is what has been given to you to carry. You did not choose it. It chose you, and now it is yours. There is a kind of freedom in accepting this, a strange relief in stopping the search for a way out, and instead fully inhabiting the reality of where you are. The isolation does not become less real when you accept it, but it becomes less alien. It stops being something that is happening to you against your will and becomes instead the shape of your particular existence, the particular way that consciousness has manifested in your life. You learn to live in both worlds simultaneously without trying to resolve the contradiction. You learn to speak the language of the common world when necessary, while maintaining your citizenship in the private world of your own awareness. You learn to have compassion for the sleeping world without feeling obligated to wake it up. You learn to hold your consciousness lightly enough that it does not consume you, while still refusing to betray it for the sake of comfort. This is not a solution. It is a way of being with what has no solution, and perhaps that is the closest thing to wisdom that exists for the consciously isolated, the recognition that not everything can be fixed or overcome or transcended, that some things simply are, and our task is not to escape them, but to meet them with as much honesty and courage as we can manage. You are living now in what Dostoevsky called the underground, that space beneath the surface world where consciousness dwells in its full, unfiltered intensity. It is dark down there. It is lonely. No one comes down to visit. No one calls to check on you. The world above continues its pleasant routines, its social gatherings, its celebrations and plans, and you hear it all as if from a great distance, muffled and irrelevant to the reality you inhabit. But here is what I need you to understand. What Dostoevsky spent his entire life trying to communicate to anyone who would listen. The underground is not a place you fell into by accident. It is not a pit you need to climb out of. It is the place where truth lives, where things are seen without the softening filter of social nicety and shared delusion. It is the place of radical honesty, of unflinching self-examination, of clear sight. And while it is often painful and always isolating, it is also the only place where genuine transformation becomes possible. Because you cannot transform what you cannot see. You cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot become more than you are without first accepting the full reality of what you are. The people above, moving through their lives in comfortable semi-consciousness, are not bad or wrong, but they are also not changing. They are recycling the same patterns, the same self-deceptions, the same comfortable lies that keep them stable, but also keep them static. You, in your isolation, in your inability to participate in those comforting patterns any longer, have been given something they do not have, the terrible gift of seeing clearly enough that change becomes possible, not certain, not easy, not guaranteed to lead anywhere better, but possible. And so the loneliness you feel, the isolation that seems like punishment, might also be understood as preparation, not preparation for some future state of happiness or peace or reconnection with the world, because Dostoevsky never promised those things, but preparation for a different way of being human, one that has looked fully into the darkness and chosen to continue anyway, one that has lost all illusions and discovered that existence itself, stripped of comforting narratives, is still somehow enough. You walk through your days now, and you see the performances, the masks, the elaborate evasions of truth that structure most human interaction, and you feel separate from all of it, unable to participate, unable to pretend that you do not see what you so clearly see. But perhaps there is a kind of freedom in that separation, a space opening up where you can begin to discover who you actually are beneath all the performances you once gave, what you actually value when stripped of the need for approval, what actually matters to you when you are no longer trying to fit into anyone else's version of meaning. The isolation gives you this space. The loss of peace creates room for a different kind of authenticity. The absence of rescue forces you to discover what resources exist within yourself that do not depend on external validation or comfort or the approval of a world that cannot understand what you see. This is not a consolation. This is not meant to make you feel better about your isolation, but it is the truth, and you have chosen truth over comfort. So I offer it to you as the only genuine thing I can give. You are alone, yes. You have lost your peace, yes. No one is coming to save you, yes. But in that aloneness, in that loss, in that absence of rescue, you have been given something rare and terrible and real. You have been given yourself, stripped of all the illusions that once mediated between you and your own existence. And while that self is often not what you hoped it would be, while it contains shadows and wounds and contradictions that are painful to witness, it is at least real. It is at least yours. And from that reality, from that painful honesty, something authentic can grow that could never emerge from the comfortable sleep of unconsciousness. You are not too much for this world. You are exactly what consciousness looks like when it refuses to compromise with comfortable falsehood. You are what happens to a human being who chooses to see clearly even when clarity brings suffering. And while the world may not reward this choice, while your friends and family may not understand it, while you may spend long nights alone with the weight of what you know pressing against your chest, you're living an authentic human life in a way that most people never approach. You are bearing witness to reality. You are refusing to lie. You are insisting on truth, even when truth costs everything. Dostoevsky would recognize you. He would see you in your isolation and know exactly what you are experiencing because he lived it himself in his years in Siberia, in his struggles with doubt and consciousness, in his creation of characters who could not escape from what they understood. He would not tell you that it gets easier. He would not promise you that peace will return, or that connection will be restored, or that someone will finally come to save you. But he would tell you that your suffering is not meaningless, that your isolation is not evidence of failure, that your inability to return to unconsciousness is not a defect, but a kind of terrible integrity. And he would tell you what I'm telling you now. Carry it. This is yours to carry, not forever, because nothing is forever, but for now. Carry the weight of consciousness. Carry the loneliness of truth. Carry the burden of seeing what others cannot or will not see. Carry it not because it will lead somewhere better, but because this is what it means to be genuinely awake in a sleeping world. And in that carrying, in that refusal to put down the burden or betray the truth for the sake of comfort, you become something that the world desperately needs, even if it cannot recognize or reward it. You become a witness to reality, and that witness, solitary and unrewarded and deeply painful as it is, matters. If you found yourself in these words, if you recognized your own isolation in this description of consciousness and its costs, then know this: you are not alone in your aloneness. There are others who have walked this path, who walk it now, scattered and invisible, but real. We do not find each other easily because we have learned to hide what we see, learned to move through the world without disturbing the comfortable illusions that sustain it. But we are here, and your willingness to acknowledge your own isolation, to stop pretending that you are fine or that you can simply think your way back to peace, is perhaps the first step toward finding the few others who can meet you in that underground space where truth lives. Share in the comments if any part of this resonated with the particular quality of isolation you have been experiencing. Sometimes simply naming it, simply acknowledging that yes, this is real, this is what I am living through, can create a small opening in the darkness. And if you want to continue exploring these questions about consciousness and suffering and what it means to live authentically in a world built on comfortable lies, subscribe for more reflections that refuse to offer false comfort but insist on the dignity of genuine struggle. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your willingness to sit with difficult truths. Thank you for choosing consciousness even when consciousness chooses suffering.